Imagine being someplace quiet, remote, safe in your thoughts. Then suddenly your peace is shattered by a sound, a call, a laugh, a whistle. In the pit of your stomach, you know you're no longer alone, and whoever or whatever is near you is not your friend, and they've been luring you to them. I grew up in the mountains. My parents owned a large number of horses and they would do pack trips out in the mountains for tourists. And my job was to wrangle the horses in the morning as we let them out to graze in the evening. The horses wore cowbells, which made them easier to find, but occasionally they would wander hours away from the camp. One morning I went out to fetch them as usual and discovered that the horses had wandered a considerable distance and I was having a bit of trouble finding them. I hiked up into an area with old, thick forest and I was beginning to get frustrated and worried about the time, but I just couldn't find them, and returning to camp without them wasn't an option. Then, in the distance, I heard their bells. I was so relieved and I set off in that direction and followed the sound to the edge of a winding creek. Then the bells stopped. So I waited. Then the bells began ringing in a different direction. So I followed them, thinking maybe the water had carried the sound. So back into the woods I went, following the bells. Well, the sound led me back out to a different part of the same winding stream, where the bells again stopped. Well, this happened over and over. Only each time I was getting deeper and deeper into the woods. The woods at this point were far too dense. The horses couldn't have been in there. It made no sense. And yet I still heard the bells close by. This happened 4 times total, and that last time I forgot the job and I listened to my intuition. Something was leading me or luring me into the thickest, darkest part of the woods. So I got the hell out of there. When I got back to camp, the horses had wandered in on their own, which is an extremely rare occurrence, and they were all fine. Whatever was in those woods didn't want the horses, it wanted me. No matter how well you know the terrain and the natural landmarks, you can never truly know all that lurks within the dark, thick woods. That man's experience begs the question, what did the thing in the woods want with him? What would it have done to him had he continued following the sound of those bells? Want to see more of my videos? Did you know members of my YouTube channel get an extra exclusive video every month? There's a link in the description below if you'd like more info. Well, this next story happened earlier this year to a young woman from County Meath in Ireland who set out for a perfectly normal walk in nearby woods, a walk which took an unexpected and frightening turn. I just wanted to get my steps up for a fitness challenge that we were doing at work, so I decided to go walk somewhere nice instead of just doing laps around my estate. It was a nice day, so I thought I would go for a walk in the woods. What was the worst that could happen? It was all going fine. I was on a proper walking path. Then there was a point where the path led between 2 identical trees. I stepped through, and as I did, I lay a hand on each of the trees, and people have told me since that that was my big mistake. I remember I noticed that one of the trees was really warm to the touch and the other was really wet and cold. But I just continued on. I walked on along the path and I think I took a left. The main path kind of branched off to the left and it just went nowhere. It went into a really overgrown forest with really high weeds and plants, so I knew it wasn't the right path. I turned and walked back because I thought that this can't have been the main path and I should have taken the other way. So I took the other way, and then that, similarly, just went nowhere. Well, I went back to the fork to start over again, thinking I'd try to go back the way I came. But that also led me nowhere, just a dead end in the woods, all thick and overgrown. I walked back up the main path, but it was strange. It didn't look familiar. It had become quite overcast at this point. I pulled up Google Maps, and I didn't have a signal on my phone at all, which really wasn't unusual for that area, so I just decided to keep trying the paths. There were only 3, so I thought I'd eventually have to get somewhere. I kept just walking down a path towards a really overgrown area, then I'd turn around, and this happened over and over. Then I heard a really light woman's voice. I don't know how to describe it. It was really high. She was shouting, "Over here!" I thought she was probably just out walking and calling to her kids or something. Then she laughed, and it was just when she laughed that the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I have a very professional job. I'm not crazy. I'm a logical person. But when I heard the same woman's voice calling from the other side of me, I knew something wasn't right. She couldn't be on both sides of me. Something was just seriously wrong, and that voice. My first instinct was to run, but I didn't even know where to run, and that's when I started to panic. Then I remembered being told that turning your clothes inside out is supposed to help if the fae turn you around, get you lost or play tricks with you. So I tried it. I felt like it was just mental, but I just had to do it. I took off my t-shirt, turned it inside out, and put it back on. All the while hoping nobody was looking at me because it was a really weird thing to do in the middle of a forest. Well, then I turned around and walked back on the path that I was on, and almost immediately came to the 2 trees again. But it was so weird. When I turned around and came back along the path, I came to them quicker than when I had been walking in the opposite direction. The time wasn't right. But I didn't stop to think about it. I just wanted to get through those identical trees. And after I'd stepped through them, I realised I could hear the sound of birds again, and people and dogs. I didn't have a clue what had just happened to me. When I got back to the car, I looked at my steps. Now, the last time I checked my step counter before I entered the woods, I had done 8,000 steps or so. Well, I had put on an extra 10,000 steps just while I was in those woods. I didn't come from a family that would have believed in that sort of stuff, advice about dealing with fairies. But that particular thing just stuck in my head. I feel lucky that I remembered the turning the clothes inside out thing. I don't mind saying I was scared when she laughed. That laugh. I don't think I've words in the English language for it. I had never heard someone laugh like that. I knew something was really wrong. I just got this really bad feeling that things were not going to end well for me if I didn't do something. I hadn't really been scared until then, until I heard her when she laughed. I've talked to quite a few people about what happened actually, and was surprised by the amount of people that it has happened to. People were saying to me that the 2 trees on the path were a portal. I've no massive opinion on that myself, but something really weird happened, that's certain. If you liked this video, check out the one on screen now. I think you'll enjoy it too. It's a strange world. Keep your eyes and ears open. and be kind. Cheerio!